Hey guys, and welcome to the Working Money Channel. So Bitcoin taking a bit of a breather today after 2 days of bullish movement. You guys can see down here on the chart the volume spike for Bitcoin did increase over the last couple of days. We can see that reflected here in the candlesticks. You can see it a little better here on the hourly. Let me throw that on the hourly real quickly. Positive momentum for Bitcoin, but now we're seeing it come back down, retracing just a little bit, taking a bit of a breather. Bitcoin price right now at 17,700. We've got XRP up here right now as well, and not too much movement for XRP. Guessing there is not going to be a settlement today. Today is December the 15th. And, as per Charles Hoskinson, we were hoping to see something, although Eleanor Turret did come out and say that those rumors were indeed false. I mean, we probably would have seen some price action by now for XRP had that been the case. However, XRP is still trading at in and around 38 cents per coin. We do, in fact, though, have the latest news on SBF and his new residence in a correctional facility. This is from the Wolf of All Streets here on Twitter. Absolutely baffling that SBF settled in the Bahamas and chose to stay even after the FTX collapse, presumably knowing the conditions of the prison. So this was reported by Daily Mail, and here is a quote: "It is not fit for humanity. Sam Bankman-Fried's Bahamas jail is infested with rats and maggots, and inmates at high risk of TB getting bed sores from lying on the ground, while kids are detained with adult prisoners. Fallen crypto giant Sam Bankman-Fried will be remanded in custody in the Bahamas in a prison that was described in 2019 as not being fit for humanity." So I already just gave you guys a bit of descriptor on that. On Tuesday, a judge in Nassau ordered the FTX founder to be held without bail while he fights extradition to the United States on a range of charges that include securities and wire fraud. SBF, who is 30 years old, has argued that he should be granted a $250,000 bail and house arrest because of his vegetarianism, depression, and dependency on medication. Aww. Here are just some photos of the conditions of the prison, and in 2019, apparently there was a piece done where they went out and they took a look at this Bahamian prison, and apparently these are some of the conditions here. Instead, Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt ordered that SBF must spend the next 2 months at the Bahamas' infamous Fox Hill prison, known for its rodent infestations, violence, and mixing of children with adult prisoners, before his next court appearance, which will be on February the 8th. So guys, that is the latest with regards to SBF and, his new accommodations over there. David Schwartz speaking out, actually being quite vocal over here on Twitter with regards to SBF, the indictment, and some of Kevin O'Leary's responses, which we will get to in a second here. So he starts off by saying the SBF indictment looks very rushed. It's very light on factual details, doesn't name any co-conspirators, and covers only a tiny fraction of what we know happened. That said, these are still serious federal charges that could put him away for a very long time. And I don't think the rushing will do any harm. Other charges can be added later, and more details aren't strictly necessary at this stage anyway, but that does leave the question, why the rush? And there are a lot of possible answers, so a bit of speculation here. One is that the perception that the United States government wasn't doing anything was starting to sting. Sam being free seemed a travesty to many. Another is fear Sam would move somewhere. He could be extradited. There may have been some concerns that he would do something bad while free, such as hide funds or contaminate witnesses. I think it's probably that they were afraid some other jurisdiction would get dibs on him. One thing I find completely implausible is that this is in any way part of a cover-up, an attempt to stop him from speaking in ways that would harm him, or otherwise something that benefits him. These charges are very serious, and the SDNY has done him absolutely no favors. So getting a bit of an introduction, at least David Schwartz's opinion on this indictment, Michael Branch bringing this to our attention. Now, with regards to this story, obviously, this has been big for cryptocurrency as a whole. How big, you ask? Well, not as big as the Terra Luna collapse or the Celsius collapse, apparently. Realized losses from the FTX collapse peaked at $9 billion, far below some earlier crises. So blockchain analytics firm Chainalysis has attempted to put the FTX collapse into perspective, comparing peak weekly realized losses in the wake of the exchange's collapse compared to previous major cryptocurrency collapses in 2022 specifically. So we're looking at this year, and there have been quite a few. Gotta say, December 14th report found that the depegging of Terra USD or UST in May saw weekly realized losses peak at $20.5 billion, while the subsequent collapse of Three Arrows Capital and Celsius in June saw weekly realized losses peak at $33 billion. So in comparison, the FTX thing wasn't as big as these other two incidences. Our data suggests that FTX's demise hasn't been crypto's investors' biggest issue this year. Both the depegging of Terra's UST token and the collapse weeks later. So, the fact that Terra collapsed and then weeks later, as a chain reaction, Celsius and 3 Arrows, 3AC, that occurred. I think that overall had a bigger impact, and even, just the numbers just show that in general, but that was also the first thing too. So, cryptocurrency investors were kind of caught off guard at that point. I think after that, investors, whether it's retail or institutional, they were becoming more wise to, the situation unfolding. And then when the FTX thing occurred, people were surprised, but at least they were, I'm speculating here. I feel like they were a bit more prepared. The one thing that the FTX thing did definitely show us, though, is that people were still custodying on cryptocurrency exchanges, and that needed to stop. So there was an influx of cold wallet purchases. I know I saw my Ledger affiliate cold wallet purchases just spike over November, mainly because of the FTX thing, but also it kind of overlapped over the Black Friday day event sale. So you could get a really good deal on a cold wallet storage solution. Well, there you have it. It wasn't the biggest incident, but well, oh well. Does this man have no shame? Another one from David Schwartz here. Against the entire weight of an absurdly massive amount of evidence, he blames the FTX collapse on none other than Binance. Guys, this is Kevin O'Leary, a clip of him explaining where he thinks things went wrong.
Why do you believe FTX failed?
I have an opinion. I don't have the records. Here it is. These two behemoths that own the unregulated market together and grew these incredible businesses in terms of growth were at war with each other. And one put the other out of business intentionally. Now, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe there's nothing wrong with love and war. But Binance is a massive, unregulated global monopoly now. They put FTX out of business.
So that was basically the point that Kevin O'Leary wanted to hit home. The fact that, it was a battle, two behemoths, two of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges in the world, and Binance essentially pulled the trigger, putting FTX out of business with what they did. Michael Branch here posting this. So Kevin O'Leary said in a congressional hearing on Wednesday that Binance's CEO and founder Changpeng Zhao deliberately caused the collapse of FTX. So I'm giving you guys some fast facts here. So as you guys heard in the clip, I have an opinion, not for the records. Some are criticizing Kevin because this is, information that he likely got from the FTX team, likely got from SBF. So he said FTX and Binance were at war with one another and one put the other in business intentionally. Now, maybe there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe there's nothing wrong with love and war, as you guys heard. But Binance is a massive unregulated global monopoly now. So that, first of all, is not true. Binance is regulated in the regions that they operate in. Let's not forget they wouldn't be able to operate in the United States under Binance.us if they were not regulated. O'Leary's comments come as part of a Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs hearing titled Crypto Crash, Why the FTX Bubble Burst and the Harm to Customers. The television star invested in FTX and was said to have been paid $15 million to be a spokesperson for the company. So he's got a vested interest in there, obviously. In early November, Zhao tweeted that Binance was liquidating its FTT position, the native token of FTX, a move that contributed to a run on FTX and its eventual bankruptcy. O'Leary also used his testimony to call for greater regulation in the industry. So here's where, these guys have their vested interests. Obviously, they have an allegiance to, whoever is footing the bill for them, whoever is paying them to sponsor them. So on the one hand, the crypto regulation needs to happen. We know that. Can it be beneficial for everybody else? Or does it have to be at the expense of everybody else? Well, the collateral damage are obviously the FTX holders. But I mean us, XRP holders, let's take us as an example. If we did not custody on FTX and we did keep our crypto safe in a cold wallet storage solution, or maybe another exchange that has not collapsed or has not collapsed in parentheses yet, is what O'Leary doing beneficial, or will it be beneficial for the entire crypto industry? I know we want there to be justice for FTX. Obviously, it was not Binance's fault. Binance did something that triggered the collapse. And I mean, if anything, they just exposed the corruption. David Schwartz continuing to weigh in on this. So Sam made a serious miscalculation in his public communications after the FTX collapse. Almost literally everyone could see that nothing he could say would help him. Prosecutors will ignore anything he says that helps him, but anything harmful will be an exhibit in a future case. So an interesting point here from David Schwartz. Sam likely figured his biggest risk of criminal prosecution was around him knowing loaning, investing, or risking FTX customer funds. So he kind of played stupid, right? He pretended not to have known too much or not to have paid too much attention to this, thinking he could reduce the risk. He created a narrative that he failed to provide adequate controls against doing so accidentally. David goes on by saying, but as anyone who watches Law and Order knows, when you commit to a narrative, the prosecution can adjust their accusations to fit that narrative. There is, of course, a huge moral issue with charging people with crimes based on a narrative you know is false. But there's no problem with charging people with crimes they actually committed in a way that perfectly uses the narrative they've spun against them. And that's one thing prosecutors did expertly here. For example, prosecutors will point to Sam's claims to potential FTX investors that his commitment to sophisticated risk management was a key FTX competitive advantage, and then they will show us this. Which was basically Sam Bankman-Fried, his statement from December the 1st. I wasn't even trying, like I wasn't spending any time or effort trying to manage risk on FTX. What happened, happened. And if I had been spending an hour a day thinking about risk management on FTX, I don't think that would have happened. So, he's playing the part of the fool quite well here. I don't think it ever occurred to SBF that he could face criminal liability for these misrepresentations. So when he crafted his public narrative, he walked right into them. Exactly. He kind of closed himself in with this narrative. David Schwartz goes on to say, and this in no way paints prosecutors into a corner. Him misleading investors about having risk control measures in place is perfectly consistent with him also stealing from customers. John Dean here, though, having none of Kevin O'Leary's statement. I just saw Kevin O'Leary's utter disgrace of an answer on why FTX failed. He literally blames the entire collapse on CZ. And doesn't once say SB fraud is to blame, even though he just got indicted on 8 accounts and is the biggest fraud since Madoff. An absolute clown show. Wheezy at Nerd Nation Unboxed down here saying, he literally discredits the experts investigating the data and bases his beliefs on SBF's words. And he's got a 15 million reasons, says PT Wanderer down here again. The vested interest, right? The paid promotion. Kevin O'Leary is doing what Kevin O'Leary does. Ali G responding, though, I believe it has more to do with this than we even know. His day in the hot seat will soon come. XRP The Future responding, that Joker wanted an exit scam and CZ blew his exit scam. CZ did what the SEC should be doing and saved a lot of retail investors by exposing the scam while the SEC was entertaining the scammers. I think CZ is kind of the hero here in a lot of ways. He did expose the scam, and maybe this was the precipice to get the fire under, Congress's butt, to get them to try to regulate this quicker. Of course, this does spur on a whole set of other issues because, the whole thing about regulation, crypto regulation, is that they didn't want to rush this along. But maybe they kind of have to now, and I don't know if that's going to end up beneficial or negative. Wheezy at Nerd Nation Unboxed also posted this, so I've got to give credit where credit is due. Someone finally stood up to Senator Elizabeth Warren. So a little bit more from Kevin O'Leary here, and I see Wheezy's point. Credit where credit is due. We do, in fact, need the regulation. That is kind of the most important thing here. Of course, we do need to seek justice as well, but the regulation, guys, that's what's going to make us rich. Listen to this.
So, Mr. O'Leary, I know that you are a big supporter of crypto, even after you lost $10 million in FTX's collapse, but you are an experienced investor. So let me ask you, do you believe that the potential benefits of crypto are so promising that we should accept weaker anti-money laundering rules and weaker compliance from crypto firms than we require from banks, from brokers, and from Western Union?
No, I think we should apply the same regulatory structure that we apply to existing trading of stocks and bonds on exchanges tied to broker-dealers. That is not complicated. It's already been implemented in other countries. And I take issue, Senator, with your concept that it makes it easier to do money laundering. Currencies have been used for drug trafficking since the 60s in the American dollar, when it was thrown out of a Piper aircraft in a duffel bag. The American dollar is also used by bad actors all the time.
Mr. O'Leary, I appreciate your point that everyone tries to engage in money laundering. That's what terrorists do. That's what drug dealers do. And that's what states like Iran and North Korea have done. The only point I'm trying to make is, should the same rules against money laundering apply to crypto in the way that they apply to banks, to stockbrokers, to credit card companies, to Western Union? And I think your answer to that was yes. Is that right?
No.
Mr. O'Leary, you have 30 seconds. Keep your answer short here.
It's not yes. I'm just saying, if you know your client rules on both sides of the transaction and use a crypto such as USDC that is regulated, you solve this problem, Senator, overnight.
Well, I appreciate that you want the same kind of rules to apply to everyone, and we can talk about what's needed to make that happen.
So, I mean, he's not wrong. At the end of the day, with regard to the cryptocurrency regulatory clarity, he's not wrong. Exactly. Kevin O'Leary may be wrong about certain things, but he's talking absolute 100% facts here. This coming from John Lent on Twitter. He is right to call out Senator Warren on her disingenuous stance here. Her face when he calls out the fact about fiat being used for illicit activity for decades was just priceless. I could not agree more. So, there's two things here. I agree with John Deaton. I mean, blaming CZ for the collapse really isn't the answer here. And Kevin O'Leary's intentions, I mean, we know they're compromised. We know he was paid. But at the end of the day, I mean, we got to look at the bigger picture, right? At the end of the day, what do we need more to feel that we were right about the FTX fraud, or the cryptocurrency regulatory clarity that will eventually make us all rich? And again, I'm not suggesting that Sam does not have to go through the appropriate measures to be tried and all that stuff. All I'm saying is that, for us at the end of the day, how do we benefit from this? More interesting points, though, here from Crypto Eddie. According to the Bohemian court records, it wasn't even CZ who initiated this. Former co-CEO Ryan Salame, the former co-CEO of FTX, Ryan Salame, blew the whistle. And it was not CZ Binance. Please stop damaging this ecosystem with your speculation. So Crypto Eddie responding to Kevin O'Leary here. Mr. Salame further advised the commission that there were only 3 persons who had necessary codes or passwords to transfer clients' assets to Alameda in this manner. And that was Sam Bankman-Fried, Nishad Singh, and Mr. Xiao Wang, or Gary Wang. In this document here, sent to the Royal Bahamas Police Force, David Schwartz also noted this. The commission was informed today by Mr. Ryan Salame, or Mr. Salame, who is the chairman of FTX, that clients' assets, which may have been held with FTX Digital, were transferred to Alameda Research. Put simply, though, that such transfers were not allowed and therefore may constitute misappropriation, theft, fraud, or any other crime. So it was noted down here, and guys, I will link all this in the description of the video if you want to go through it in further detail. Another thing that I found interesting here, too, brought up by Crypto Eddie, it's interesting that FTX tried to redeem, get this, guys, $3,000 of wrapped Bitcoin before the bankruptcy. So I think that proves intent to try to hide some of their assets. Today, BitGo CEO in a Twitter Spaces said the Alameda representative failed the security verification process required to convert it. Listen to this.
Right around the time that they were about to file the bankruptcy, in comes a burn. And there's a process for how this burn comes through. And there's some security details. And of course, we know who operative personnel are at each of the merchants. And this one came in from a person who we had never dealt with before. All of a sudden, asking to burn and get some Bitcoin. So as far as we know, I think it was probably legitimate. Maybe there's some chaos going on over there, and they had somebody else try to process it. Maybe they forgot about the process. I'm going to assume that there was no bad behavior, but it didn't match the process. So we held it up and we said, no. This is not what the burn looks like. And we need to know who this person was. And of course, the people that we had usually dealt with from Alameda were not responsive at the time. So we held it. And while we were holding it, waiting for a response on those issues, they went bankrupt. Look, I think those assets go back to the bankruptcy folks in the end. Obviously, we're not going to do anything with it. And again, I think the process is working. These are not atomic operations that happen.
So just because of a simple verification process procedure, they weren't able to access that 3,000 wrapped Bitcoin just before the bankruptcy. But we did get confirmation here that did occur. So, it is a very complicated situation. David Schwartz here saying, Sam's political contributions could have been a brilliant strategy to insulate him and his company from scrutiny, get himself favorable regulation, and so on. But I think that they're actually going to backfire on him spectacularly. For one thing, many of his contributions will probably be clawed back, or recipients will be shamed into returning them. The contributions are also a source of embarrassment for those who receive them. So let's not forget, politicians are going to have to return these contributions. But worst of all, they are likely producing anger in many of the recipients. Variants of "the jerk thinks he can buy me off, I'll show him" are probably running through the heads of every recipient of Sam's money not named Kevin O'Leary. The reason the clawbacks or the returns out of shame are so bad for Sam is that there's probably no better way to piss off a politician than to make them give back some money. So there you have it, guys. Joel Katz has been very active on this situation, and we are learning more and more about the intricacies involved. I'm wondering how this is all going to shake out. I think at the end of the day, though, the crypto regs, guys, are going to be the most important thing, especially for us, the retail holder. So, I mean, all we can really do is accumulate while these prices are low. Are you guys accumulating more XRP? You branching out to other altcoins at this moment in time? Great time to ladder in, especially if you want to cost average down if you bought in 2021. That's just my opinion, but I want to hear what you guys think. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video if you like the content I'm providing. I always love hearing your comments. See you in the next one, guys.